Okay, guys. So today we're going to continue working on the reading section. Yesterday we started with reading and we went through one of the different question types that we have. We took a look at detailed questions, right? Today we'll continue looking at the other types as well. And in order to do so, we're going to continue using the same practice set that we were using, which is about the Divakan. So let's take a look at the next question type that we have. The detail. Okay, guys. The next one we're going to do is called except type of question. And as you guys may be guessing, it's going to be asking about information that is not mentioned in the passage. So the way that I see it, this is the exact opposite of detailed questions. But it's the same, it's like the reverse of detailed questions. So detailed questions, if you guys remember, asked you for a specific detailed information that was directly explicitly mentioned in the text. So in this case, they're asking about a specific information that was not in the text. How do you know what is not in the text? The way to know is by eliminating options, by eliminating the options that were mentioned in the text. Okay, guys? You'll see what I mean, but let's take a look at an example. So maybe, Chris, do you mind reading question 3, please, on my screen? Only the question?
Okay. Which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan?
Okay, thank you so much. So as you guys can see, how do you know that you're dealing with an except question? Because of the way that it's phrased. If you guys see the word not in capital letters or the word except in capital letters, then that means that you're dealing with one of these questions. They write them in capital letters so that you don't get confused and you don't miss that part because they're asking for something that is not mentioned. Okay, guys? So let's see. I'll give you guys some time as we usually do. I'll give you 2 minutes to try to answer this question, and then I'll tell you the strategies for this specific question. Okay, guys? So let me know what you think the correct answer is, and then we'll discuss. Okay, guys. What do you think? What would you say the answer is? Any idea? No?
Maybe letter B, teacher.
Okay, letter B, you say, potential?
Yeah, potential for extensive irrigation.
Okay, okay, Valley. Anyone else?
I think the option C, teacher.
Okay, option C. Yes. So what do we do with these questions? First of all, there are two different cases for this question. The first one is when they ask you for everything in general, when they don't mention something specific. So how does that question look? They're going to say, which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 in question mark? If that is the case, they're asking for the entire paragraph, and unfortunately, you'll have to read everything in the paragraph until you find the right one, right? But if they're asking for something specific, like in this case, they're saying which is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan, they're asking for something specific. So that means that you should not read everything. You do not have to read everything. You shouldn't. You're only focusing on finding one specific thing. Now, how do we approach this question? By turning it around. It says, which is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan. How are we going to know what is not mentioned? By first knowing what are the things that are mentioned, right, as main factors in the development of Teotihuacan. So you're going to rephrase this question and ask yourselves, what are the main factors in the development of Teotihuacan? And you need to look for 3 main factors in the development of Teotihuacan in the paragraph. So as you can see, we have turned this question into a detailed question. And now everything works in the same way as what we did yesterday. So what are the main factors in the development of Teotihuacan? We need to find 3 of them because we have 4 options. 3 of them have to be here and there's one that's not. So we're going to find the 3 of them and we're going to eliminate those options because we're looking for something that's not mentioned. So how do we approach this? The same way that we did yesterday, we first identify the keywords, usually the nouns, factor, development, Teotihuacan. Now hear me out. This is one very important thing. Be careful, be extra careful when you guys have adjectives in the TOEFL test, when you have modifiers. Modifiers are these words that change the image that you have of a noun. Imagine that I tell you, imagine a car. Then your brain is going to picture any car at all. But what if I say, imagine a red car? That image is going to change, right? If I say, imagine a red, old, small car, that image changes completely. So those are adjectives, those are modifiers. Those are words that modify the noun. So be extremely careful with those modifiers because they can be the reason why you make mistakes that you're not supposed to, mistakes that are completely easy to avoid. So they are asking here for the main factors in the development of Teotihuacan. That main is very important because it's not the same saying a main factor than let's say a secondary factor, right? Those are 2 entirely different things. So in this case, you're looking for the main factors in the development of Teotihuacan. Those are the keywords. You search for the keywords in the text. We have Teotihuacan, development, main factors. So you have to read around those words. But if you didn't select the word main as a keyword, then you would be continuing to read everything, right? Because then they continue to talk about other factors. But we're not looking at other factors. What we want is main factors, and these are the main factors. So we are not going to read this part here. So let's see, it says, how did this tremendous development take place? And why did it happen in Teotihuacan? So the main factors related to this development in the development of Teotihuacan are, that's the answer, right? That has to be the answer. The first one is Teotihuacan's geographic location on a natural trade route to the south and east of the Valley of Mexico. That was the first main factor in the development of Teotihuacan. Once you already have part of the answer, what you guys need to do is turn to the options, and now you need to start going one by one, seeing if you have this same information in one of the options. So do we have that information in one of the options? Does one of the options say Teotihuacan's geographic location on a natural trade route to the south and east of the Valley of Mexico? Do we have one option that says that?
Yes, the option D.
Exactly. So option D says Teotihuacan's location on a natural trade route. Perfect. So if we have that option, that means that that is mentioned in the text. We are just proving that it's mentioned in the text as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan. So we can eliminate option D. It's not option D. When you guys are eliminating answers, be careful not to choose one that contains false information or that is incomplete. For example, what would happen if you have option D, Teotihuacan's location on a natural trade route, and it says to the west of the Valley of Mexico. If it says to the west, that would be wrong, right? It wouldn't be mentioned in the text because the text says to the south and east. So be careful not to eliminate one that contains wrong information. In this case, everything's okay because we have it just like that. So we can eliminate option. But if something was different, if something said something differently, then you wouldn't be able to eliminate that option just yet. Okay, guys? In this case, everything's fine. Geographic location, natural trade route. What else? What are other? We still are looking for two other main factors, right? So we continue reading. It says the obsidian resources in the Teotihuacan Valley itself. Do we have this option? This information in the answer choices?
Yes, in letter A.
Letter A. We need to double check that it's the same, but it is the same, right? Obsidian in the Teotihuacan Valley, the presence of obsidian in the Teotihuacan Valley, the same. We continue reading, we just need one more. And the valley's potential for extensive irrigation. Do we have this option in the answer choices?
Maybe in the letter D. I mean B.
Exactly. The potential for extensive irrigation of the Teotihuacan Valley lands. It's the same as the valley's potential for extensive irrigation. Exactly the same. So we have already eliminated A, B, and D. Therefore, the only option that we have left is option C. That's the correct. So I guess the important thing here is first to know what you're looking for. Because the question doesn't say which is not mentioned in paragraph 2, right? What happens if later it says the exact role of other factors is much more difficult to pinpoint? For instance, a long period of volcanic inactivity in the Teotihuacan Valley. If you have that, it would still be the correct option because this is not the main factor in the development of Teotihuacan, right? You need to look for an option that actually answers the question. It's not just about what is mentioned, but what is mentioned as what they say. So as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan. So careful with these modifiers, because if you didn't read this carefully and you didn't just see the word main, then you are going to read everything that you don't have to. And just that, and go one by one, eliminating answer choices until you get to the one that is not mentioned in the text. Okay. So basically, the strategy is the same for detailed questions. So first you need to turn it around. You need to think that it's a detailed question and they're asking for the opposite. What are the main factors? Once you have found the main factors, you eliminate them from the options and you get with you are left with the one that's correct. Okay, guys? So is it clear? Do you have any questions so far about this question type, detailed questions?
Everything's clear to me, teacher.
Okay, thank you so much, Walter, for the feedback. Okay, guys, perfect. Let's see, let's continue. Now, our next question is called inference questions. These are a little bit different. For some students, they are a little bit harder because in contrary to all of the questions that we've seen so far, in this case, they are going to ask you for implied information. That means information that is not directly mentioned, directly stated in the text, but instead information that is suggested in the text, information that is implicitly said. So for this question specifically, you will have to be very logical. You will have to draw inferences, you will have to draw conclusions, and you need to reason it out. Okay, guys? How do you know that it's an inference question? Because it contains the word infer or suggest. What can be inferred? What can be suggested? So maybe Ignacio, could you please read question 4?
Okay. What can be inferred from paragraph 3 about quick will go prior to 200 before Christ?
Okay, thank you so much, Ignacio. So same as usual, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to try to answer this question. Let me know what you think and we'll discuss. Okay, guys, so what do you think? What would the answer to this question be? Any ideas?
Maybe the option D.
Maybe option D, you say, okay. Anyone else?
Maybe the option C.
Okay. Nobody else? Okay, guys. The next says what can be inferred from paragraph 3 about Quiquilco prior to 200 BC. So this works similarly to the previous question. First thing that you need to do is see what the question is asking about. There are two types of these questions. The first one is when they ask, what can be inferred from paragraph 3 period? Question. So if they ask you something like that, what can be inferred from paragraph 3, from paragraph 6, from paragraph 4, then that means that you have to read everything. You have to read the entire paragraph until you come to a conclusion about the paragraph. But if they ask you about something specifically, then there's no need for you guys to read everything. You just need to focus on the information they ask you about. In this case, it says, what can be inferred from paragraph 3 about Quiquilco prior to 200 BC? So you're not looking for every single thing in this text. You're just looking for information related to Quiquilco prior to 200 BC. So that is the first thing you need to do, and identify what they're asking about. Now, before you start reading the options, before you draw any conclusions, you need to see what information you have, what information is explicitly said, explicitly mentioned, and what evidence you have to base your results on. So they're asking about Quiquilco prior to this time. So let's search for what information we have about Quiquilco prior to 200 before Christ. So we search for the keywords as we usually do, Quiquilco prior to 200 BC. And we start reading around those keywords. It says, prior to 200 BC, a number of relatively small centers coexisted in and near the Valley of Mexico. That is the first, well, we don't know anything yet, right? Because they're not saying anything about Quiquilco. So around this time, the largest of these centers, okay, Quiquilco. So what is the first thing that we know from the text about Quiquilco prior to 200 BC? The first thing that we know is that it was a relatively small center that coexisted in or near the Valley of Mexico. The first piece of information we have is that it was in or near the Valley of Mexico. And it was a relatively small center, right? It says. Okay. But then it says, around this time, the largest of these centers, Quiquilco, okay, so that is another piece of information. They're saying that Quiquilco was actually the largest of these centers that coexisted in or near the Valley of Mexico. So they were relatively small, but Quiquilco was the largest of these small centers. So that is another thing that we know about Quiquilco prior to this time. What else do we know? It says Quiquilco was seriously affected by a volcanic eruption with much of its agricultural land covered by land. That is another very interesting information we have. We know that Quiquilco was really seriously affected by a volcanic eruption that damaged, that covered, that destroyed their agricultural land. Let's continue reading. What else do we know about Quiquilco? It says, with Quiquilco eliminated as a potential rival, any one of a number of relatively modest towns might have emerged. Okay, so it says Quiquilco after this volcanic eruption was eliminated as a rival, and any other town could have emerged as a leading economic and political center in Central Mexico. So all of this information is no longer about Quiquilco, right? They are talking about other towns, and then they're talking about Teotihuacan. And we don't care about that. We just care about Quiquilco prior to 200 BC. So you should not read everything else. All of these doesn't matter, right? I'm going to, all right, I'm going to do this. So that's what we know about Quiquilco. We know that Quiquilco was the largest of these centers that was located either inside or maybe near the Valley of Mexico. We know that it was seriously affected by a volcanic eruption that destroyed their land, and they were eliminated as a rival. So based on that information, now you have all of the facts together. You have to start going around the options, eliminating options, and getting to the one that you think makes more sense based on the information. The one that you think could be a direct conclusion of something that was said. So let's start in option A. It says, it was a fairly small city until that date. Okay, what do we know about that? We know that they were relatively small, but we also know that they were the largest of those centers. So maybe, maybe not, but then they say until that date. That means hasta esa fecha, right? So hasta esa fecha era una ciudad pequeña. O sea que después de esa fecha se volvieron grandes. No, right? That's not correct. It's actually the other way around. Es al contrario. They were a fairly large city. They were a fairly large center until that date that they were eliminated, right? Antes de 200 antes de Cristo, eran una ciudad bastante, relativamente grande, pero luego se eliminaron. Entonces, it's actually the opposite of A. So if it's not A, if it doesn't make sense, if we cannot prove it, we eliminate it, right? So we're not going to say it's not A. Now, option B says it was located outside the Valley of Mexico. What information do we have about that? Well, they say that this center could have been inside the Valley of Mexico or maybe near the Valley of Mexico. We have those two options. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, do we have enough information to prove that they were located outside the Valley of Mexico and not inside? Do we have enough evidence?
No.
Right, we don't, because it says coexisted in or near. So it could have been inside or it could have been outside. We don't know. And we don't have enough evidence to prove that it was outside. So not B. And finally, well, option C says it emerged rapidly as an economical and political center. This is a very common TOEFL trap where they include phrases that are going to sound familiar to you. Why am I saying familiar? Because if you guys read what comes after that, it says any one of a number of relatively modest towns might have emerged as a leading economic and a political center. Power. So this sounds a lot like option C. But are they talking about Cuicuilco? Do we know how Cuicuilco emerged? I mean, we know that it was a center. Maybe we can infer that they were an economical and political center. But do we actually know how Cuicuilco emerged? Whether they emerged rapidly or not? Do we have enough evidence and enough information to prove that they emerged rapidly?
No, we don't, teacher.
We don't, right? Because they don't say anything about how Cuicuilco emerged as a city. It's not C, right? We don't have actually any type of information about how they were before, or how they emerged, how they grew. We don't know it. So by eliminating options, we can come to the conclusion that it's B, but also just because it makes sense, right? If you guys look at the option, it says its economy relied heavily on agriculture. So could anyone maybe explain why it's D? Somebody chose D, right? So can you guys tell me why? Why D now?
Because in the text said the agricultural land covered by lava, so they lost all the agriculture.
Exactly. So yes, their agricultural land was destroyed. That means that they couldn't cultivate anymore. And because of that, or we don't know if because, right? We are inferring that it was because of that. But right after the volcanic eruption happened and their agricultural land was destroyed, they were eliminated. So something must have happened there. There needs to be an explanation as to why they were eliminated. They were eliminated, they went down because they depended too much on agriculture. Their economy was mainly based on agriculture. We are inferring that. How can we infer that? Because we have the proof, right? We have the information. It says their agricultural land was destroyed and then they were eliminated. So why were they eliminated? Because they depended too much on agriculture. And without their agricultural land functioning, then obviously their economy also went down. So its economy probably relied heavily on agriculture, right?
Sorry, it's like they lost almost everything in their economy, losing their culture. I'm sorry, their agriculture.
Exactly, well. So yes. So you guys need to have evidence to prove the option. If you don't have evidence, if you're just guessing, then it's not the correct, right? You need to make sure that you can prove it logically with information from the text, right? The way that we're doing. You need to ask yourself, so can I prove this point? Where is the information that tells me that I can come to this conclusion? That's how these inference questions work. They do require a little more time, to be honest. So maybe these are going to take you 2 minutes, whereas others, like detailed questions, should take you 1 minute. But yes. Is this okay so far? Do you have any questions about this? Okay, guys, perfect. So those are inference questions. Now our next question type is called purpose questions. And well, as the name says, you guys, or they will be asking about the purpose of things, the reasons why the author included some specific part of the text. So they will be asking you about the author's choices. They are going to be phrased like, why does the author talk about this? Why does the author use this word? Why does the writer uses this sentence? Why does the writer mentions this or quotes this? It's all about the reasons behind the author's choices. Now, in order to answer these questions, it's all about understanding main ideas, to be honest. That's a really necessary skill for this question type, but we'll see. Let's take a look at the example. So, let's see. Fernando, please, can you read question 8?
Okay, teacher. In paragraph 6, the author discussed the thriving obsidian operation in order to A. Explain why manufacturing was the main industry of Teotihuacan. B. Give an example of an industry that took very little time to develop in Teotihuacan. C. Illustrate how several factors influenced each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city. And D. Explain now a successful industry can, well, D. Explain how a successful industry can be a source of wealth and a source of conflict at the same time.
Okay, thank you so much, Fernando. Thank you for reading the options as well. Technically, well, first let's look at the questions. It says, the question. The author discusses this in order to, this is just basically a synonym of because. So they're asking for the reason, right? Why does the author discuss the thriving obsidian operation? Why? Why does the author talk about this thriving obsidian operation? So it's better if you guys don't read the options first. So just look at the question. Most of the questions are going to be like that. It's better not to read the options in the beginning. There are some exceptions as well. Now, in this case, better not. So we're going to do the same. I'll give you guys 2 minutes. Tell me what you think and we'll discuss. Okay, guys, so what would you say?
Maybe option C.
Okay. Do you guys agree?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, perfect. So yes, it is actually option C. Well done. So in this case, first thing that you need to understand is that every single paragraph has one main idea. So every paragraph talks about one specific thing, and that is called the main idea. Okay, guys? Every single paragraph focuses on one thing or one idea. It's like a unity, and every single word, every single punctuation mark, every phrase, every fact, every detail, every quote, every single thing that you can find in the paragraph is always somehow going to support the main idea, always, right? So the reason why the author, let's say, mentions immigrants is because it's supporting somehow the main idea of the text. So every single thing will support the main idea. So therefore, in order to answer this question correctly, the first thing you need to do is look and try to find the main idea of the paragraph. How do you find the main idea of the paragraph? By first of all, not focusing on details. The main idea is never going to be a specific thing, right? It's never going to focus on one specific detail. Main ideas are big, are general. Second, most of the time, if not always, but most of the time, the main ideas are very likely going to be in the first or in the last sentence, okay? In this case, I really recommend reading the first sentences, and that's why I told you to read the first sentences first, right? When you are reading the entire text, just read the first sentence of each part. So if we read the first sentence, it says, the picture of Teotihuacan that emerges is a classic picture of positive feedback among obsidian mining and working, trade, population growth, irrigation, and religious tourism. That is the main idea here. It's general, it's talking about many, many things, mining, working, trade, population growth, irrigation, religious tourism. It isn't focusing on only one, right? It's general. And second, basically, if you take a look at everything that comes after that, that's just an example of what was mentioned before. It says, Teotihuacan shows the classic picture of positive feedback. Positive feedback means una retroalimentación positiva entre todos estos aspectos. So that means that all of these factors, all of these aspects of the city had a positive effect, a positive impact on each other, right? Let's say that trading had a positive effect on population growth, and population growth had a positive effect on irrigation, and irrigation had a positive effect on religion, and so forth. So everything had a positive influence on it and everything. That is the main idea, right, in this text. And if you guys look at what they're asking for, because they say, why does the author discuss the thriving obsidian operation? And if you look at that part, it says, the thriving obsidian operation, for example, so you know that the thriving obsidian operation is an example, right? So that allows you to already eliminate a couple of options because you know that it's an example of the main idea. If you guys know the main idea and if you know how this specific information supports that main idea, then you already have the answer. You know that it's an example of how everything had a positive effect on everything, right, in Teotihuacan. So that is exactly what option C says. It says, illustrate how several factors, obsidian mining, working, trade, population growth, irrigation, influenced each other, had a positive feedback among each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city, right? They even say it at the end, power and wealthy for the elite. So this thriving obsidian operation is only an example. And if you analyze it, it is an example, right? Because it says, so the obsidian operation had a good effect on population, right? because it necessitated more miners and manufacturers and traders. So all of that led to increased wealth. So this thriving obsidian operation had a positive effect on population growth because they needed more people, and that had a positive effect on increasing the wealth. And then they attracted more immigrants, which gave more power to the elite, which gave them the means to serve as additions to the labor force. And that had a positive effect on irrigation works, and that more population, and then more power and wealth. So everything led to everything, right? The obsidian operation led to more workers, which led to more population, which led to more irrigation work, which led to more wealth. So everything was related. That's basically what the first sentence says, right? This positive feedback that happened among all of these factors. So again, what you guys need to do is identify the main idea of the paragraph. And if you have the main idea, then you're already probably, you are halfway through. Because the only option that contains that main idea is option C. Several factors influence each other to make a powerful and wealthy city. The other options, manufacturing was the main industry of Teotihuacan. That's not true, and that's not what they say, and that's not the main idea. An industry that took very little time to develop? No, that's not the main idea. A successful industry being a source of wealth and a source of conflict? They don't say anything about conflict, right? Source of wealth and source of conflict. So the only thing, the main idea, the only option that contains that is options. Also, all of these options are always going to have a verb, and then they will have the object. The verb has to be how this idea contributes to the main idea. In this case, it's an example. So you know that it's not an explanation, it's not explain why, it's not an explaining how, because it's not explaining the manner of something, it's an example, it's an illustration. So it's an example or an illustration. It could have been B or C, but the only one that contains the main idea is C. Okay, guys? Just find the main idea of the paragraph and you'll be good to go. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions so far?
No, teacher, is fine.
Okay, guys. So now it's your turn. I'll give you another example. This one is not about the same text about the Teotihuacan, because I wasn't able to find another question in that set. Remember that sometimes you only have one. So we're going to be reading about Darwin's theory, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay, guys? Here's the question. If you can please screenshot this or maybe take a picture so that you can see the question in the answer choices. Is it done? Okay, guys, that was the question, and here's our paragraph. Okay, guys, you know what to do. I'll give you guys 2 minutes, or let's say 3 because it's a little bit long, and tell me what the answer is. Okay, guys, so what do you think the answer would be in this case?
Maybe the option D.
Okay, do you guys agree? So yes, you guys are option D. So in this case, first we're looking for the main idea of this text, right? And the main idea is exactly that. It says, first they start by talking about what Darwin's theory is, right? Darwin's theory is this and that. So thus, first it says, the theory provides an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change. However, nevertheless, it's just a theory and elusively difficult to prove, right? So basically, that's the main idea, that this is just a theory and it's difficult to prove. And why, how do we know that it's the main idea? Because everything is trying to support that point. The reason that they start talking about the holes in Darwin's theory is because they want to prove that it's just a theory, right? It has holes, it has problems, it has shortcomings. And they start talking about one of the holes in Darwin's theory, the reducibly complex systems. And everything there is going to be supporting that main idea that is just a theory, difficult to prove. That's why we have these complex systems. You know, it says, these complex systems, if so interreliant, would be resistant to Darwin's supposition of how evolution occurs. So these irreducibly complex systems are resistant to his theory, right? And he himself admitted that this is a hole in his theory, right? It's absurd. And so exactly. To support the claim that natural selection is just a theory and it's difficult to prove. It has holes, right? It has shortcomings. Okay, guys. So what do you think so far? Do you guys understand why option D would be the correct one in this case? Do you see the relationship between this quote and the main idea? Can you see the main idea as well? Do you have any questions?
No, teacher, everything is fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Mateo. So I think we're going to have to stop here. We have covered three question types except inference purpose, right? Tomorrow we'll continue with paraphrase, reference, and summary questions. And on Friday we'll probably be practicing doing something that we have. Okay, guys, so if you don't have questions, please, today we have to actually complete 2 daily surveys. I'm sorry, 2 surveys, but they're not daily, one is weekly. So I'm sending you guys the weekly survey first. Please don't go yet. If you can please fill it out, I really appreciate it. And once you are all done with this survey, I'll send the other poll so that you can also fill that one. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'm sending the other one as well. And that'll be it for today's class. Thank you so much for joining, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Goodbye, teacher.
Bye, teacher.
Goodbye, teacher. See you tomorrow.
Bye, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye, Fernando.